Welcome back to Unbend Your Brain, Cognitive Biases in Litigation and Arbitration. Let's start with an experiment. You have to rank yourself among your peers of professionals. In your country, in your industry, it doesn't really matter. So for this question, let's assume that in your country, in your industry, there would be a full ranking of all lawyers or public affairs professionals or academics, whatever your job is. A full ranking 1 through 10,000. Where would you place yourself on that ranking? In which of the following segments? In the top 25? In the bottom 25? Somewhere in between? Let me guess. You have probably placed yourself somewhere here. Right? Congratulations! That's what happens in practically all studies. For example, in a Swiss study, 92%, basically all of Swiss judges placed themselves either in the best or second best category. So all of them above average. That's not possible statistically. But psychologically, it's very human. This is called overconfidence bias. Human beings tend to overestimate, tend to judge themselves and their abilities in an egocentric and self-serving way. They attribute their own successes to personal strength and failures to external circumstances. They rate themselves as above average in terms of desirable qualities such as health, professional skills, and the likelihood of having a happy marriage. Now, overconfidence bias as a cognitive limitation is different from what we would typically call the personality trait of someone is a confident person. Overconfidence bias is the tendency to overestimate our knowledge and abilities in a certain area, like a professional area, or driving or speculating on the stock market. Generally, also the people who we would consider as shy and not really visibly confident, they also suffer from overconfidence bias. By the way, there is a gender-specific difference between men and women, and it's what you would expect. To be sure, overconfidence afflicts both men and women, but men suffer from it much more than women do. But where does this bias come from? From an evolutionary standpoint, it seems counterintuitive that we would have inherited a hardwired system that systematically makes us overestimate, wrongly judge our abilities. But when you consider it in the context of our more primitive ancestors, it begins to make sense. So let's look at these bullfrogs. Yes, bullfrogs. Here's what they do. They position themselves within the hollow tree trunks and adapt their calls so that they resonate within the empty cavity, which makes it louder and deeper. And by doing so, they are louder and deeper, these bullfrogs, and seem more dominant than they are in reality, which helps in particular with mating. Advanced organisms, like human beings, were also intent on convincing other members of their species that they are more dominant, stronger, or intelligent. Whether for purposes of scaring away enemies or increasing your chances of procreation, the more dominant you appear, the better you are off, right? And now's the funny thing. The most reliable way of doing that, of appearing more dominant, stronger, is convincing yourself that is actually the case, to deceive yourself that is the truth. We've all seen this phenomenon, right? Those people who seem most persuasive, are often those who have drunk their own Kool-Aid. And that appears to be the evolutionary reason that we are more confident in our abilities and knowledge then is normally justified. Which, by the way, is why overconfidence is not all bad, especially, let's say, from an economic standpoint, because overconfidence drives entrepreneurs to take risks, to innovate, to push limits. And that's something we need as a society. But of course, there are also problems with overconfidence. Overconfidence can lead to a lack of oversight, lack of seeking feedback, simplifying issues. When people are overconfident, they take less precautions. Think about the Titanic. Overconfidence can also lead to poor ethical decision making. Many business scandals like Enron have been attributed, at least in part, to overconfidence. And in litigation and arbitration, I'm sure you can already think of many ways how overconfidence can play a role. One of the most important ways, both in my personal experience and according to research, is how overconfidence bias influences how lawyers assess the chances of success of their clients' cases, which in turn can have a detrimental impact on strategy and is often a roadblock to reasonable settlements. How exactly this happens and what we can do to mitigate it, specifically in the legal context, that's what we'll talk about in the next episode. Looking forward.